Minds Nation. Welcome to another episode of the New Minds Podcast, home of inspiring, intriguing, sometimes uncomfortable, but always rich conversations with special guests, with special missions in life and visions and platforms. And today, I know I always say this, but sincerely, we have a very special guest who's already beginning to inspire me tremendously. We have Carole Issa on the show today. Originally from Lebanon, now residing in Sydney, Australia, a training specialist, a keynote speaker, a high-impact leadership coach, a team trainer, the founder of Alephpreneur. I'm going to ask you about that name in just a second. Really seems to have a spark and a passion for activating leaders. And today the topic is going to be on activating leadership through a particular module filter of emotional mastery. So we'll dive into some of that, but first I just want to welcome you, Carole. Thanks for joining me on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben.
Yeah, so Carole, I think we're what I'm beginning to call Corona connections. It's like the flip side of this kind of shelter in place that we've all been through worldwide has opened up windows and connections that were always there, but for some reason they're more visible. Do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so we connected for the first time, I think, on LinkedIn a month or so ago, and began kind of chatting and getting to know each other. And as I got deeper and deeper into your work and what you're doing, I got more and more excited about a deeper chat. And that has kind of led us to today. So before we get into the details of today's topic of emotional mastery, do you mind sharing? I think it's always inspiring to hear at least the outline of an entrepreneur's journey. Can you tell us just a little bit about your journey from, I mean, you don't have to take us from birth to present, but is there a turning point moment, maybe in your childhood, maybe a little bit older, where you had that initial spark of like this entrepreneurial spark that is now manifesting very clearly?
Thank you for the question. I actually, it's interesting. I keep thinking about it, and I'm not sure at what point it really started. But connecting the dots backwards, I can see some instances in my life where I was put in situations mostly where something needed to be done and had never been done before. And it was pretty much, Carole, we need to do this. We have no idea how to do it. You do it. And so I had to come up with ways of doing it, ideas, and it was pretty much getting this creative muscle built over time, and being okay and comfortable to dealing with uncertainty, and of course, like failure too. I mean, it wasn't always being successful, and I had to learn how to manage my relationship with failures as well. So the thing that I can remember, though, is something that I keep sharing with my community members, is being at school and not like I didn't really like history back then. I used to get bored for some reason. And then I remember one day our teacher was talking about the Phoenicians, which is a very ancient civilization, yes, that had some cities across the Mediterranean Sea. And a good number of them were in Lebanon, what's known as being Lebanon today, which wasn't before. Right. So, all of a sudden, for some reason, I was all ears, and I leaned into the conversation because I thought that something that they had this entrepreneurial kick to their story. Like, how is it that they were moving from little cities, looking for opportunities outside, helping other civilizations, getting really good at sailing ships, creating really robust fleet, like to be able to sail and to exchange the goods across the sea. And how is it that they were using as well their IP or their research and development, what's known as being research and development, to create unique technologies like the royal purple dye, for example. And they were the only ones who had the secret on how to make it and selling it at a very high price to royalty. So they had the scientists at the back, and they had people who were really good at selling, really emotionally intelligent at the front, who were actually doing the marketing and the sales aspect. So which now has like terms, we have proper terms for that. Yeah. But back then I was very interested and impressed with their story. So I remember like different instances in my life where I really was interested more than other situations to lean in and to listen and to get curious more about whenever there was something that had to do with entrepreneurship without knowing that it was entrepreneurship back then.
Yeah, like way before it was a buzzword, there was some kind of call for that way of thinking that you were resonating with
Yeah,
already.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, you
exactly.
mentioned so many wonderful things there that we know now are keys to entrepreneurship. And you didn't necessarily use the terms, but you talked about confronting failure. And we know that growth mindset versus a fixed mindset is absolutely crucial. You talked about leaning in and kind of like
Mm,
embracing the unknown and the uncertainty, which we also know is a key factor for successful entrepreneurs. And I love how you brought up the Phoenicians because, having been to Lebanon several times and visited some of the beautiful ancient sites like Byblos, I never quite framed it that way. But what you're arguing here, it almost sounds like a PhD dissertation. What you're arguing here is this thread of entrepreneurship of like the modern entrepreneur in Lebanon. As we know, great Lebanese entrepreneurs have spread all over the planet. That it's like an ancient thread that you can trace back to that entrepreneurial
mm,
thinking civilization. I think that's pretty
mm.
beautiful. And so,
Yeah.
and you also mentioned, this is interesting. You use the term EQ in referring to the Phoenicians, and obviously they didn't have that term. But I want to unpack that just a little bit. What is it about the Phoenician way of thinking or acting that you think demonstrates a high EQ, and that might end up being a great bridge into to the main topic today?
Yes, I think it's very interesting how they started studying the different needs of civilizations around them. So and seeing how is it that they could move, like bring the product to them. So let's say moving the cedars wood. Or the marble goods in Italy to other civilizations that needed them. So studying what the needs were and turning back to the sea, like they were not stuck with the small cities they were in.
Mm.
They were actually curious about other civilizations. What is it that they needed, and how is it that they could actually provide that need for them? So that needs a high level of curiosity, which is part of being emotionally intelligent, and at the same time knowing how to lead the conversations and get out of this conversation what really matters.
Mm.
So really understanding at the back of the conversation what really is needed, because sometimes people don't know what they really need or want,
Mm.
and it's important to filter out of the conversation and help them and lead them to being able to language what is it that they are after. And I think for Phoenicians to be that successful back then, they definitely needed that skill to be able to create that match between what they could provide and what the market or the civilizations needed around them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And that seems to be one of your primary arguments or theses of the modern entrepreneur as well. And I'm assuming
Mm.
that that's the core of these pillars of emotional mastery. Do you want to start talking about those? Like, you want to go through the three
Yes.
pillars? Yeah.
Sure. So this model was developed, and I've been really thinking about it for a long time now, and I think it really emerged during the crisis. Again,
Mm.
interestingly, it might sound weird if I say thank you, COVID. This is how it really was for me in that case.
Yeah.
So it was very much about people who were going through hardship and being under a very high level of stress and anxiety that they've never experienced before
Mm.
or for a brief period of time. So there was a very high level of uncertainty. And people were asking me, how is it that we can use some tools, or do you have anything that you could give us that can help us go through this period without having to experience that much of a distress feeling or anxiety or stress? And so I started to think about what could be a way to make it manageable, structured, so that they can see where they're at and how they're doing. Having said that, to go back to initially how you bridged into this question, so most of the time we think about emotional intelligence as being something that is external. So how is it that we're dealing with other people? How is it that we are having a conversation with other people to influence them with something that is good for them and for us?
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting, very few people talk about self-emotional intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
which is where this model is focusing. Just like in leadership, interestingly, when I walk into organizations or when I work one-on-one with executives and team managers, most of the time they come with this want that they want to learn how to impact others, how to empower others, how to influence others, how to motivate others.
Mm.
when in fact it all starts with self-leadership. And most of the times they are amazed when they realize that it starts with them. So we start with self-leadership skills before we start looking outwards. So having said that, this is where the model sits. It's a very interesting perspective for people who want to develop either their leadership skills or their emotional intelligence skills. And the way it works, it's like a Venn diagram. So I did a little drawing here.
Oh, yeah. Let's see.
Okay.
So
yeah, my toddler. Hang on, my little son just came this morning, grabbed the paper, and just like, wow,
that gives it character.
We need it. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
So you have, it's a Venn diagram, really. That's how it works. So you have awareness at the top.
Okay.
And then you have ownership. And then action, or taking the responsibility of taking action. And the way it works is that, first of all, you want to bring your awareness to what's going on internally inside of your own world. And this isn't something that a lot of people are used to.
Yeah.
And usually the way it works is that either they completely avoid it or they get stuck in busyness so that they don't look at it. So this is the first part. So bringing awareness to your internal world. The second part is owning where is it that you feel that you're choosing things that aren't resourceful, so that are not getting you the results that you are after, so that you don't get stuck with it and you're just holding on to it, like where it's becoming self-sabotage. So you're owning that it's not working. Yeah, that's me. It's no one else's fault. You're not externalizing the problem. You're realizing that the gap is within you, and it's in your power that you take back control of it so that you can create the change. Now, raising your hand and saying it's me is not enough. So ownership is not enough, because you can say, yeah, it's me, I get it, but then you can decide not to do anything about it. So you're not really taking the responsibility of activating the change. You're just sitting in, I know. Knowing is not enough. So this is where we move to the third pillar, which is action. So responsibility of taking action and doing something about it. Now, there are things that you get as a result of the conjunction of the different pillars. So when you look at awareness and you combine it with ownership, you get courage, because it takes courage actually to bring your awareness and to own it. So both need courage. So when you do this over and over again, you're starting to develop this courage muscle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And ownership and action, or taking the responsibility of activating, it builds your confidence, because now you know you can handle it, even if you fail. So you learn how, when you succeed, you're actually celebrating your successes. You're not resting on your laurels. You look at what is it that you can do differently, better. How's it that you can keep growing and learning? So you have this confidence of keep going into, I'm owning it and I'm doing something about it. I'm owning it and I'm doing something about it. That's the confidence muscle that is being built. Yeah. And then when you swing back into awareness again, so action, responsibility of action and awareness, this is where you start getting the growth muscle. So you're growing, you're transforming. And it gives you the internal fuel to keep inspiring you, so that you're no longer really relying on external environment to move forward and doing it again and again and again and again. So this is what it looks like.
So, all right. Well, as a lover of Venn diagrams, you already had me when you showed me a triple Venn diagram. Like I knew it was going to be brilliant. But, so it makes complete sense. I mean, and so you formulated this model during the crisis, kind of based on,
that's correct,
based on the feedback and the demand and the questions and the needs that you were getting from people that you work with and coach. Yeah. There's one piece I didn't get, though, maybe you didn't say it, and that's whenever there's a triple Venn diagram, the super magic happens at the sweet spot in the very middle. I don't think you mentioned, do you have...
I haven't reached there yet.
Okay, so you haven't conceptualized the very sweet spot in the middle yet. Okay.
So I said I didn't mention it yet.
Okay.
So it's actually, at the heart of it is emotional mastery. So that's where the sweet spot is. So it's the 3 key pillars of emotional mastery. Gotcha. So that the middle is actual emotional mastery. Yeah.
Yes. Now it makes absolute beautiful sense. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just ask some questions, maybe about some of the individual spheres, and then kind of like the conjunctions too. So, I mean, awareness, what you're talking about, obviously sounds a lot like mindfulness, different forms of mindfulness. You talked about the awareness of kind of like your internal processes. So I'm assuming this means, self-sabotaging thoughts, emotions, paradigms that might be outdated. Are these the kinds of things that we're becoming aware of?
Yes, and there's something usually that I walk people through, which is the distinction between emotion, feeling, and mood. Because most of the times people mix those up. So what I mean by this is that emotion, usually it's something that you cannot control. It just happens as a trigger, an external trigger. So let's say you just had a baby and you have tears going down. So this is just an emotional trigger. And it can last for, let's say, a few seconds to up to a minute or something along those lines. But then it's the processing that creates the feeling, processing like what just happened there. And you start to internalize it and you start to put a meaning to it so that it starts making sense. This is where you have control over what meaning you attach to it. And it becomes a feeling. So when you attach a meaning to the emotion, it becomes a feeling. And the feeling takes longer, depends how much you focus on it before it goes away. And the feeling is a contributing factor to creating the overarching mood, because mood can be as well be affected by the environment you're in or how you're handling your body, like what food you're having, how much are you drinking, how much are you sleeping. So mood, it's more complex, but a good part of how your mood is being affected is the meaning you attach to the emotion. So the feeling that you are stuck with or you are focusing on. So if it's a resourceful feeling, you're going to find there's this overarching mood of being positive or looking at opportunities, possibilities. How is it that we can create new, let's say, solutions, as opposed to being unresourceful, being problem focused and going on this downward spiral of how everything's not working and what's wrong. So this is an important distinction where usually I walk people like this is part of the awareness process to have a look at what is it that you can control so that you can start working on those and owning those aspects.
I think I'm going to start thinking of you as like a psychological alchemist. I love how you've like reverse engineered, like you've taken something as kind of nebulous as like mood, and you've reverse engineered it down into these streams and factors that come together so beautifully that kind of empowers a person to take control. Now, speaking of control, ownership is a synonym for ownership here, like responsibility for the experience. The experience that you're having is the result of seeds that you've planted or habits or processes that are ingrained in you that you kind of have to take responsibility for. Is that a fair way of kind of paraphrasing?
Yes, that's correct. And I think if we go a little more granular to be more specific in terms of examples, I see a lot of this happening, whether it's with entrepreneurs or business leaders or team leaders I work with. Some people have the tendency, for example, to own their success and not their failures. It's like they only celebrate when they're right, and then the failures you just try to push them away. Like they don't even look at them to see what they can learn from it. They just dismiss them. So this is not resourceful. There is the other side of the spectrum where people are not owning their successes and they're only owning their failures. And they're like, I'm not good enough. This is the internal script that keeps playing at the back of their mind. So this is a very common thing that I see with people I work with. And it's about owning both. So have a look at your successes, how you can own them, how you can celebrate them. It's okay to brag, because interestingly, a lot of people have been raised not to brag and to just be modest. And for people who are just looking and focusing at their failures, have a look at how is it that it's not only failures that you're experiencing, you are actually succeeding as well. Where is this? How is it that you're not telling me about this? So it's important when owning things to own both sides, not only because usually when I talk to people about ownership, they think about where is it that they went wrong or how is it that they fell short. It's both. It's actually owning where is it that you did it right and you succeeded, and where is it that you fell short and what have you learned from it.
Yeah, beautiful. It's a holistic framework for taking it all in, and that goes right along with awareness. So that's what awareness is as well, kind of a non-discriminating sort of presence with what's there.
Mm.
So, all right. So of these three pillars, and I know this is a new concept for you, but it's based on years and years of work that you've done with others
Yeah.
as a coach and a trainer.
Yes.
So based on that, where is most often the missing piece or the gap? Because it takes all three for emotional mastery. So what's the most common missing pillar, in your opinion, among potential entrepreneurs?
It's a variety, I would say. I would say awareness usually is okay. Like, people get awareness. I think the hard part usually is to own what you are seeing.
Okay.
And how is it that it's your choice? So this is where it all starts. So this muscle of courage, generating courage to own it, because most people have the tendency to blame external factors. So not to really realizing that, hang on a minute, there is something that you can do about this. So stop outsourcing your power. It's about how they're going to gain back control of it. So this is the first big, massive step that usually my clients go through at the beginning. Now, once this is well oiled and we're starting to really swing into awareness ownership easily, or with less resistance, this is okay. What is it you're going to do about it? How's it going to turn the situation around so that it doesn't happen again, so that we can keep moving, so that we are leaning into it, so that we are taking action, we're not procrastinating or sitting. So this becomes more about the tendency here. What's more challenging here is to having the ability to point out where the action needs to be taken. So that it actually affects what they have just been brought your awareness to, and what their awareness to, and what they have just owned. So realizing what action is going to really create that change, like playing the big game, not the small game, committing to the big game.
Yeah, I like that. I think a lot of entrepreneurs will like that kind of language as well. So I'm sure you've thought about this a lot. When you look at the quote, like famous entrepreneurs of our time, is it easy for you to kind of map these traits to the way they carry themselves, like an Elon Musk or a Steve Jobs, who I know has passed, but so much is known about his leadership style. Do you identify these or kind of map these on to some known entrepreneurs as kind of examples, or do you have some narratives from your personal coaching or from yourself that would help highlight it even more, like with a specific narrative?
Yeah, so two folds to your question. So the first part is, usually I have the tendency not to, I'd say, reference entrepreneurs who are out there already, because people have the tendency to feel that they're too far ahead, and they don't realize that it took so much time for them to get there. This overnight success doesn't happen. It's very difficult for entrepreneurs who are just starting their journey to get this. So I tend not to create like idols or that kind of thing, because it actually scares them. It creates this massive gap that makes them feel like they will never get there. This is number one. Number two, there's a tendency, and this is in my opinion, of those entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, or anyone that we usually reference in the entrepreneurial world. They start to go in swinging into doing things that do not serve an early stage entrepreneur, because they are where they are. They can do it. If an early stage entrepreneur start having this behavior or this way of being, they will not be able to get there. So for example, Steve Jobs is very well known to have a very interesting character along, like how harsh he was, how stubborn he was, and all of this. So it doesn't serve an early stage entrepreneur to be this way.
Right.
And like, you want to model some aspects, but some other aspects do not work. So I have the tendency to move away from this, and more look at, okay, right, where you are in your journey, what makes sense to where you're at right now. So we look at someone who's a few steps ahead, and we start trying to model what works. In having said that, so something that I come across a lot are, for example, the technicians who are really good at what they do, who hide behind the screen. So they're like, I'm not getting anyone who's coming. I'm not getting enough users to my platform. Why is no one buying my stuff and all of this? So bringing their awareness to, are you doing or taking the actions that actually do matter? You're hiding behind your screen because most probably you're not someone who's very much of a people's person. There are some technicians who have both muscles trained. Most technicians are more into staying on like behind their screen, coding, creating that product that they think is really cool.
Yeah.
But then either no one out there knows about it, or it's not interesting for the market. Like, you're not actually filtering out what really is interesting for the market. It's interesting for you, but not for them.
Yeah.
So bringing that awareness to really not overusing your natural behavior and what you're good at, and see how is it that you're going to train other muscles, and owning the fact that, you love what you do, but it's not enough. You need other things to make it happen. You're choosing to hide behind your screen and not go out there. So own it, and let's do something about it. Let's start to train that people's muscle so that you can understand better what they need to match it with your skill set, and understand how is it that you're going to influence people to be interested in what you're doing, so that you can start attracting users to your platform. So this is a very so it's a very specific example of how it might play out.
Yeah, to me, you took me right back to your original example of the Phoenicians, and how you mentioned how their entrepreneurial edge, they could kind of go into a situation with that EQ to kind of get what was needed out of the situation, not in a greedy or non-altruistic way, but kind of like the opposite of the technician you just described. The technician you just described was a little bit, single-minded and stuck on the genius of his or her idea, rather than kind of understanding the awareness of the market is this. I need to convince people. I need to communicate, and sort of the holistic picture. Another thing came to mind. I know this is separate but connected. It's something you posted the other day, actually, that I thought was really intriguing. It was the -1, 0, +1 concept of an entrepreneur. Whatever stage you're in as an entrepreneur, always have someone a few steps ahead of you that you can kind of model and get inspiration from. Someone who's a peer, kind of like similar stage as you, and then someone a few steps behind that you can kind of mentor and coach and kind of see yourself in. Now, I have the author of the idea here. I don't know why I was saying it, but did I do it justice?
Beautifully done.
Okay, great. I thought that was really intriguing. As an entrepreneur myself, I look back at my journey, and it was always that case of having someone a few steps ahead to kind of like, oh, okay. And then you find the right mentors at the right moment, and then you have people kind of right there with you. And now finally, as I feel like I'm at the stage where many are coming to me as seeing me as the person who's a little bit further down the road than them, and it's an interesting change in perspective. You've just been going and going, and you realize, wow, I have come down the road quite a ways.
Absolutely. That's so true. We forget where we came from. It's like we forget the achievements that we did, like how much we know as well. Unless someone is actually asking us some questions about it, like, oh, okay, we can actually offer a lot of value.
And speaking of value and speaking of action, there's a couple other things that I know we wanted to bring up. One, I think, is an opportunity for budding or existing entrepreneurs to get involved. And another is the new Facebook group, Leadership Activators Facebook group. Can you want to talk about those two things?
Yes, absolutely. So we have two different initiatives that were born as well as a result of the crisis. The first one, which we haven't announced yet, so it's being officially announced here on the podcast for the first time. We're about to announce it, next week. So there are a lot of people who have lost their jobs or had some cut down on their salaries, people who are looking to make some money on the side. And as well, students who have just finished their studies, who are thinking about what is it that they can do right now, besides like going and finding a job. So all of them really, for us, fall under this umbrella of learning how is it that you can develop the muscle of selling what you're good at and marketing it and making money out of it, and learning how is it that you can offer value. So we're giving the opportunity for people who are interested to join for free of charge. a part of the course that we run, which is the Ultimate Entrepreneurship Bootcamp. So that there is this stage where we help students or participants formulate their idea. And so finding the business idea and attracting their first paying client. So this is the first part that we're going to open for free for the public. And there's definitely a specific time during which they can join and express their interest, so that we can give them access to the materials. And then I'll be choosing, based on some criteria that I will announce, the group of people I'm going to be working with exclusively to help them. So definitely we need to see people who are doing the work, who are following the process, and who are serious about it. So I would be happy to invest time and helping them getting their first paid client. So that's the first part. So to get this up and running. And the other thing that we're helping with at the moment is everything that has to do with being on your way to developing emotional mastery. So not wait for something to happen like the crisis, for example, to realize that there was a gap or that we needed to learn those skills. So we are helping people getting access to tools. Different tools that I use with my clients so that they can start developing their muscle of emotional mastery. And we have different sections in the Facebook group that we've created, which is the Leadership Activators Facebook group that you can join anytime. So it's you get instant access to those tools, and at the same time I'm organizing some live interviews, some pop-ups where I do some Q&A sessions with participants or the members of this group. I answer some of the needs that they have. Like last week we did something that had to do with how to deal with the crisis in business. So we brought in a business leader who had just used the crisis as a propelling force, as opposed to something that was going to put them down. And he walked us through his thinking on how is it that he's done that. In a week time, we're going to bring someone who's going to talk about how the career market is changing and how is it that you can reinvent yourself, how to create a LinkedIn profile, how to update your CV, all of this, to help people who are on this path. So it's a different mix of topics that we are looking to help our community members with. And so this is how it works. Yeah. And I would love for people who are actually watching this podcast to join the group, because this is where we're going to announce as well the Ultimate Entrepreneurship Bootcamp program. So that would be a way to have access to it and knowing when is it that we're going to launch it and how they can get access to it.
Okay, beautiful. And so do you recommend it for a specific stage of entrepreneur? Like if I've got the seed idea, I've got kind of like that spark, but I haven't even begun my process, it sounds like this could be really fruitful. Is that correct?
Yes,
and how
that's
about,
correct.
How about if I'm already a little bit established and down the road a little bit, also a good opportunity?
I would say yes, because we had a lot of participants join the program that already are running a business. And they used, it depends again how resourceful the person is and what angle they're looking at the content with. So yes, the content is developed in such a way, having in mind primarily the person who hasn't started their business yet. But having said that, there are a lot of pieces there that you can use, even if you have already launched your business, to refine things that you might have overlooked or might have been a blind spot for, like, I can do this. So if someone is looking to have a different perspective or to stress test what they are going through in their business, that would be a great opportunity as well to visit those frameworks.
Yeah. But again, Carole, you mentioned you'll have some criteria that you'll use to choose kind of like the select group that you'll kind of coach through that process. But on the other hand,
yes,
the Facebook Leadership Activators group on Facebook is sounds like that's fruitful for anyone. And the focus there is going to be on building those 3 pillars of emotional mastery, the thing that we talked about today. And with the types of guests and interactions and opportunities that you mentioned, which sounds absolutely fascinating. I personally entered the group yesterday. I can't wait to introduce myself and start getting involved. And viewers right now have your LinkedIn profile right there, as well as CaroleIssa.com. And I'm assuming that's a great place to stay tuned in to upcoming announcements and anything regarding the programs.
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to point something out. So if you're watching this interview and you're interested to connect on LinkedIn, please make sure that you add a message so that I know where we have met, because this is something as well that most of the times I get like people connecting with me and I have no idea who they are, and it becomes a bit difficult for me to accept. So just make sure to tell me that this is where we have met so that I add you.
Which is good pragmatic advice for entrepreneurs who like to network anyways, right? That we both
yeah
yeah
exactly, absolutely.
Well, Carole, it's been an absolute honor and a very fruitful conversation. I'm super excited. I love it when I have a conversation that gets me even more pumped up about something that I'm already on the path for. That's a very positive fuel. And thanks for juggling the time zones with me there in Australia. I know you're a day ahead
Thank you
of
for
us.
being patient, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a feeling we're going to have many conversations to come. At least I hope so. And I can't wait to see the project unfold. I can't wait to see everything that happens in the group on Facebook. And thanks so much. I'm also waiting for the book on
Thank you.
emotional mastery, because there's a lot there to unpack.
Yes.
Has it crossed your mind?
Yes, fair point.
Has it crossed your mind to turn it into a book?
I think, yeah. I mean, yeah, not at this stage. I have so many other things that I'm focused on at the moment. So yes, it will be further down the track. Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
Well, stay safe and keep staying positive.
You too.
I have to say, like the optimism and the energy and the hopefulness that you project just kind of comes through everything you do, and I just, at a personal level, I really appreciate that and kind of want to commend you for it. Yeah. So
thank you, Ben.
Thanks again, and health and happiness to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay,
Bye.
take care.